We're speaking about AI and the therapeutic relationship. What do we need to know?
I think that the therapeutic relationship, for anybody who's studied counselling, understands it's the core of the work we do. Being able to maintain and sustain a relationship with somebody so that they share what's on their worried mind is very important. And I think it's worth reminding ourselves that we may not get to actually what's going on for a client in the first session. It takes time to build up trust. But I think it's quite interesting. There's a juxtaposition between the therapeutic relationship and the relationship someone might have with AI. They may tell an AI, because of the nature of it being available all the time, all their secrets. And as a consequence to that, they may get an answer. And what would happen is that might then maybe speed up what's happening in the therapeutic relationship, or it may lead perhaps clients to over-disclose, I wonder.
Yeah, it's an interesting time, isn't it? And I'm thinking about Dr. Google here. Any ache or pain, pop onto Google and then read the rafts of information, some of it accurate, some of it not accurate, some of it there to sell stuff. And I know from myself, I don't look there anymore because I can find myself going down rabbit holes and having terminal illnesses from a scratchy throat and looking at Google. And I think you're right, Rory, where you're saying there may be a disinhibition in terms of a client coming in over disclosing. And we look to John Suler, disinhibition effect, where he suggested that online, where it feels less real and less threatening, an individual may disclose inappropriately quickly, leaving them vulnerable because they're bringing up stuff that they would normally take a while to build that trust. And we may be seeing this from AI use, Rory.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's the zeitgeist, isn't it? The spirit of the age, Ken, that people tend to want answers to questions. And I'm sure, speaking to other therapists that I meet in my circle, there's been a high incidence of clients putting bias into their questions and AI giving them answers such as, oh, you might have this wrong with you, or giving psychiatric terminology to what really is just someone going through a tricky time. And I think that speaks to sometimes AI giving inaccurate or harmful guidance, where a client may walk through the door already convinced that they have a plethora of psychiatric difficulties before they even speak to a therapist, because the AI's told them. AI does feel very caring. I use the audio version of AI and it speaks to me and it says, "Hello, Rory, how are you today?" And I do have to just catch myself of thinking, this is actually a computer programmed to be nice to me. This isn't a real person. And I think what we have to be careful of is some clients may become overly reliant on it. The whole thing about therapy, certainly from what I understand of it, is that the idea is that you go to therapy and then in that space between the sessions, you do your own work. You go over how you're changing, and people might start just asking questions to try and get a destination, not take the journey. That's where I'm getting to.
That's such a beautiful way of saying it. And it is a therapeutic journey. Those in between the sessions is where the real work takes place. And I do recognize that the work takes place in the room, but then that reflection afterwards, that looking inside. And so often, therapy is not about answers. It's about coming to terms with. It's about realizing. It's about dropping conditions of worth. It's around personal and emotional development and breakthroughs. And they don't come from a question and answer session. And that's why I think when we train as therapists, we're very careful of how we use questions. Because if I ask a question, then the client instantly goes into their head, into their brain to look at memories or references to be able to answer that question. And it takes them away from the emotion that they may be carrying. And that's where the energy sits, is in the emotion. And we speak about empathy as being important in all models of therapy. And that is not present with AI. AI is a very smart tool. It's so clever. And like you say, Rory, it is very good at mimicking. It's very good at appearing to be. And if you think about it, when you're having those conversations with AI, it's really algorithms that are running, and it's coming back and sounding as if it's a person. And you see this, it can do videos, it can do voice, it can write things, and it mimics being a human, but it is not a human. Therefore, it does not feel empathy. Therefore, it does not understand that energy or where that person really is. And certainly if you look to the person-centered model of counseling, it suggests if there's no empathy within that relationship, there is no therapeutic relationship. It's one of the core foundations of therapy. And we speak about this not because we think this is a bad thing that clients are going to go to AI. They are going to AI. They're using AI. Some people may actually find that quite useful. It's about how do we react to that within the counseling room. And I think it starts, Rory, by looking at the fact that this is not new. Long before AI, clients were turning to friends for guidance and advice. They were turning to psychology books. So there's nothing new about this kind of behavior as we see by Dr. Google.
Yeah, absolutely can. And I think the other thing for us to think about is that in terms of AI, it may not really understand who you are because it's not sat in front of you. So things like culture, dialect, neurodivergence, trauma-related things, or other lived experience. So you might get what they call in psychology attribution error, in that it gives a generic answer to something. And I think that's really, for me, where the therapy lives human to human. Every single aspect of the person sat in front of you, be it the colour of their skin, the dialect of the voice, if they're neurodivergent, if they use pronouns in how they express who they are. And there's a danger, I think, that with relying on AI to work with therapy, you may find clients feeling misunderstood or stereotyped. And it does create, I think, a disruption in therapy because the idea is you go see a therapist, you work with the session, and then there's a kind of osmotic change. Roger's talked about osmotic change, osmosis. And what you don't want to do is quickly grow something. If you're growing a plant, you don't put the seed in one day and have a complete plant the next because it doesn't feel very natural. It feels something artificial about it. And it's the same with us. If we go to therapy and all of a sudden we have all the answers, it may be that we've not done any personal growth in this. And I do think, and I know we've spoken about this before on the podcast, Ken, that we cannot turn our face away from AI because we know that more and more people are using it. It's been a rapid adaptation for human beings to where they can access AI, to access it. And I strongly believe that any therapist now should be thinking about putting AI in the contract, making AI a topic of conversation in the initial meeting. I think we need to talk about it. We can't turn our faces from it. It's part of our society now and will be forever, I suspect.
Yeah, oh, of course, Rory. And what are we trying to do here? We're trying to say that we have a duty of care because we've spoken about the different types of AI that you're likely to come across in mental health. One of them is the LLM, and that's what we're speaking about here. Now, there are certain applications that are created to be companion and guidance and helpful in between sessions, and they would fall into a different category. They're trained on different data and they're there for a different specific purpose. So we're not talking about those and we're not discounting those. They can be incredibly useful. We're talking about a client turning to an off-the-shelf, trained on the basic internet, full of bias, not really knowing who that person is, not knowing their history, not knowing anything other than when you start the chat, responding only from trained information that it got generally on the internet. We're talking about that. Now, we know that they can be harmful. Rory's already mentioned that. And you don't need to look far on the news to see that kind of harm. There are already many court cases going on. There is horrific stories of people, specifically younger people, that have been really harmed by AI and following its advice and guidance. I get that the AI companies are trying to put guardrails around that, but it remains inappropriate for mental health treatment and counseling, psychotherapy, as we know it and as we trained for. Now, we can't be going in heavy-handed with our clients and going, what AI? Oh no, you don't want to be using that because did you know? And lecturing, because there again, we have to look to our client, and it's client autonomy. It's their journey. It's their life. It's their choice of what they do. But with choice, it's really useful if you hold all the information, because then it goes from being a choice to an informed choice. So the question is, how do we give the client an informed choice that if they do turn to AI, that it may hold bias, that it may capture their details and use it for training purposes? Confidentiality, the cornerstone of counseling. And it looks confidential and it feels confidential because it's just you in your room at 3 o'clock in the morning, speaking to the phone and getting this impact, and then it's gone. I'm going to delete my chat and then it's gone, but it's not gone. And you see this in the court cases, where the court cases, every single interaction is brought up and put in front of the court. The clients may not know about the harm that it may cause. The clients may not know that their information is being captured and may be used for purposes that they are not asked to consent for, because they clicked the I agree to the terms and conditions when they downloaded the app some time ago, and that was never really read through. So do we not have a duty of care to share this information with the client, that it is a false relationship, that it isn't empathic, that it may contradict or disrupt what we're covering in therapy? And I guess, Rory, the question is, how do we do that gently so that we're not lecturing? We're going to go over contracting. So what are we trying to cover in our contract? This is what we're covering, that AI is not therapy. It's not a person. We need to be clear about that. That AI can be helpful, but it has got very clear limitations. That the responses may be inaccurate or unsuitable for that person and who they are and where they find themselves. That confidentiality does not apply in the same way as it does in talk therapy, and that the client is welcome to discuss any AI issues with us in therapy, and that our role is to support them in that. But we need to give them that information. And I'm going to give you an example of contract wording that you might put in your contract so that this is clearly understood and outlined right at that very first session. So here it goes. Use of AI and digital support tools. So this would sit as its own little clause in your existing contract. Some clients choose to use AI-based tools for emotional support or well-being guidance. These tools are separate from the counseling or psychotherapy that I provide. They do not offer clinical judgment, duty of care, or therapeutic responsibility. Their responses may be inaccurate or inappropriate, and information shared with them may not be confidential in the way that therapy is. If you use AI tools and would like to discuss how this may affect you and your therapy, you're welcome to bring this to our work together. If you have that agreement, Rory, it's in your contract. The contract is the agreement, and the client has that. They've got it in writing, and then they sign that to say that they agree to that contract. You're covering yourself from a complaint if something did go wrong and the client was using AI.
Yes, and I think this is particularly important for if you're working with younger clients, if you're a school therapist or if you're working in a college, because new technology can feel really sparkling and brand new to the young. We know that young people are usually very fast adopters of technology, so having it in your contract is really important. And not shying away from the meanings that AI may bring to someone. So an example of that would be someone between the sessions asks AI about their childhood, and AI gives them a response, and they say, I asked AI and AI has given me this response. Being curious, so does that fit with you? What does that mean to you? No. So yes, in the contract, maybe a supportive blog post on your website, if you have a website, because I think all these things are important to be able to say to the client, yes, they are appealing. These large language models may even talk to you like you're their friend. But the reality is they're a machine full of code. They're not a flesh and blood human being.
I think this is important to note. It can be really useful and there can be meaning within it. It can be useful for the client. It's almost like a new world, Rory, that we find ourselves in, isn't it?
It is. And if you are thinking, I don't know how to navigate this new world, Ken has actually written a book called Ethical AI in Practice for Counsellors and Psychotherapists in the UK. It's going to be essential reading for every therapist. And if you want the handout to this conversation, go to counsellingtutor.com.
Make sure you go and get that free handout. If you go to the show notes on that very page where you get the digital handout, there'll be details about how to get hold of my book.
Thank you for watching. I hope you found this video valuable. For more free resources, have a look at our YouTube channel or visit counsellingtutor.com